The karmic consequences of the temple embezzler. The story you're about to hear is true, and it happened right here in Thailand. The word temple, Wat, refers to a sacred place, a place where monks reside and practice Buddhism. However, we often see some temples becoming blatant sources of business profit, often with the excuse that they need to raise money for the temple's maintenance and development to achieve greater prosperity. Because Buddhism is a guiding principle for most Thais in their lives and activities, having a direct or indirect connection to temples from birth, these factors have led to temples becoming hubs for various types of businesses. Given the temple's importance as a religious institution, temples are deeply intertwined with life. Therefore, wherever Thai communities settle, they often build temples alongside the villages. The older the village, the older the temple or community itself tends to be. This story happened over 30 years ago, listeners. It's about the karma of a man whose life was intimately connected to the temple. But even though he was close to the temple, his morality and virtue were terribly distant. Back then, people in rural areas valued the temple as a sacred place of worship. They never regretted making donations to the temple. The villages of Hua Thon Subdistrict, Suvarnabhumi District, Roi Et Province never felt any regret. Therefore, the village temple, though small, was continuously developed by the villagers, until one day, a temple committee was formed to oversee its development, with Ta Chun as one of its members. The behavior of this monk, Ta Chun, was criticized by the villagers at the time regarding his untrustworthiness in many matters. However, no villager dared to take the lead in opposing or removing Ta Chun from the temple committee. This was because Ta Chun's son held the position of village headman, wielding considerable influence in the sub-district. Although there was no concrete evidence to incriminate Ta Chun, the villagers were well aware of his repeated embezzlement of temple funds, particularly concerning budgets for the construction of religious structures, both within the monastic and temple grounds. When people are first born, they can commit wrongdoings without any conscience or sense of right and wrong. Then, committing wrongdoings again becomes even easier. For example, this man, Ta Chun, was able to embezzle the money that the villagers had donated for the development of their village temple without anyone daring to reprimand or hold him accountable. He became even more emboldened to continue committing wrongdoings without any shame, stealing temple money for himself and using temple property for personal gain, becoming a source of great disgust to the villagers. Therefore, even though the villagers couldn't directly hold Ta Chun accountable, indirectly, they all cursed him, wishing him eternal damnation and that he would never be reborn. May his karmic retribution be upon him. Karma has caught up with him, if not in this life or the next. It's said that during the time Ta Chun used deceit and trickery to embezzle money from the temple, he made so much that he built a large house for his children to live comfortably without caring about anyone's criticism. He probably never considered that karma exists to dare commit such a heinous sin. But for the villagers in general, they firmly believed that one day Ta Chun's past actions would come back to haunt him. Everyone waited for that day to arrive, and it did. Uncle Jun enjoyed a comfortable life for only a few years before the karma he had created began to manifest. About 6 years after he successfully built his large house, he lost his beloved son, who was shot dead, and the killer could not be found. With the death of his son, an influential village headman, Uncle Jun was hesitant to commit further corruption involving temple funds. Nevertheless, he was ostracized and removed from the temple committee, ostracized and condemned by the villagers as a dishonest and corrupt person. His actions brought shame to his wife and children, forcing them to barely dare to see anyone. To be ostracized and ostracized by society to such an extent is truly shameful. There's nothing more to say. In the end, Chun and his family could no longer face the people in this village. They had to move their family to another area. The large house built with embezzled temple funds became useless and was abandoned. Chun and his family disappeared from the village for many years without anyone hearing from them. Even their relatives didn't know where Chun and his family went or whether they were alive or dead, because they left without contacting anyone. The story of the karmic consequences for Ta Chun, the monk who embezzled temple money, doesn't end there. What happened to his family might seem like a fitting retribution, but the karma of those who betray even the Buddhist religion, betraying God, is a grave sin. The punishment for sinners doesn't stop there. One day in 1969, the villagers witnessed Ta Chun's return to his birthplace after nearly 10 years. His return made the villagers realize he hadn't yet fully paid for his past karma. Ta Chun returned to his home in a different state. He was disabled. Both his eyes were completely blind, his fingers were missing from his right hand, and his body was so frail that he was almost unrecognizable, a result of severe diabetes. He wanted to return to his birthplace to die in the house he built with money he embezzled from the temple, so that the villagers would forgive him for the grave sin he had committed in the past. Of course, everything that Uncle Chun did in the past cannot be undone. Each person must bear the consequences of their actions. However, the fact that Uncle Chun acknowledged his karma is still good, even if it was too late. At least it led to forgiveness from all the villagers on the day he passed away. Taking what doesn't belong to you, cheating and defrauding others, stealing from others, these are all sins. But Uncle Chun's sins were even heavier and more severe because he even cheated the villagers out of their donations, which were given out of their faith and devotion to religion. The villagers wanted to see their temple flourish so that it could become a center for nurturing the character of the people, preventing them from going astray and their lives from being shrouded in darkness. Thus, karmic retribution struck. It resulted in the dishonest act of deceit, even stealing temple funds like the monk Ta Chun, leading him to a dark and miserable end. His eyes were completely sunken, his fingers and hands were amputated, and he suffered terribly in the eyes of others before his agonizing death. That is the story of embezzling temple funds. Thank you for listening to Thai Local Tales. I'm Captain Piroj. Until our next journey together, take care, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next episode.